Hello.
Hi, Bon. How's it going?
Good. Welcome to True Crime
Tea
and
and ten.
Tangents.
Yeah, so close.
We're just we're basically rocking it every single week and I love it.
Every single week.
My
We're
husband
so
did say something super sweet when he listened to our first episode because we just barely started actually dropping them, right? And because I was all nervous. It's like you're releasing your little baby out into the world and it's kind of terrifying.
it is 100%. I've actually been afraid to listen because I was like, I did my heart. I did it. I did it. It's done. It's out there.
Oh yeah, no, I
No,
have I have not listened to one all the way through because that also is hard for me. I've like downloaded them, right? I've subscribed so we get the numbers. I started to make sure the audio's like at least okay. I mean, I know there's room for us to improve, but like that people can hear it. But I've been very afraid to listen to all of them. But my husband said that he liked it, and he thought our personalities were fun and engaging. But then he paused and he's like, "But I'm super attracted to your personality. That's why I married you." And I was like, "Oh, that
oh.
was so sweet of you."
He's like, but wait a second. Maybe I'm a little bit skewed because I married you.
Yeah, he was like, "Take it. I mean, take it for what it's worth. I have a bias. I thought it was good, but I also find your personality engaging." Which
I think that's really sweet.
I thought it was too. I was choking up me and my postpartum emotions. I was like, oh my goodness, that just gave me little butterflies.
You have never been more attractive to me than right now.
So hopefully, as we drop more and more, other people are also liking it. And if there's ways that you think we can improve, feel free to nicely tell us so in the comments.
Thank you. I was thinking the exact same thing. Nicely tell us in the comments below.
Yeah, you can tell us if you think we're doing something wrong. Just phrase it, with like, what do they call it? The compliment sandwich.
Right?
I like the way you do this. I think you can improve on this, but I love the way you end it with this.
Yes, I love that. Like, thank you. Look, okay, we're tender people. Just trying to have some fun and sharing that fun with others.
I don't have. You'd think as a lawyer I'd have thicker skin, and I can have thick skin with some stuff. With other stuff, I'm like, what? You didn't like that?
Well, I'm impressed that at least someone in your family listened. I don't know of anybody in our mutual family who have listened, and I cannot get anybody in my family to listen.
Well, that
In
doesn't bode
fact, I
well
had to
for
get
us.
Elle's phone from him today, and I was like, "Have you followed me yet? Have you followed us?" And he's like, "I don't know how to do that." And I'm like, "Oh, it's okay. Give me your phone."
I do have a very supportive husband. He's amazing and I love him so much. It doesn't, I don't think, bode well for us that nobody else in our families is listening. Like they're supposed to be the easy grabs?
Right? Maybe it's actually the warm market isn't as warm as we think, and they just know us too well, and they're not interested in what we have to say. But maybe the cold market is like, I'm interested in the story, and their chitter chatter is also fun.
I hope so. I hope so. I would have
Yeah,
thought a couple of our sisters would be like dead ringers for like, oh yeah, like whether I care or not, I'll listen,
right?
because you're my sister and I love you.
Hmm.
But they're also all very busy, to be fair.
Well, aren't we all? And yet here we are raising children. You're holding down three other jobs. I'm teaching a seminary, early morning seminary class, and still report. I mean, come on.
I know. I know. It's just
We all
priorities.
commute. That's the time I listen to my podcast the most.
Yeah, and dishes.
Yep, laundry. For me, it's laundry.
Yep. Oh yeah, laundry's a good one.
Hmm.
Folding laundry, doing dishes.
Yeah.
If I'm like picking up the house and stuff after the kids have gone to bed. In fact, I've been trying to start doing 10 minutes of like meditation a day.
Ooh, good for you.
Thank you. It's way harder than I thought it would be. I thought the hard thing would be finding 10 minutes to just sit and be still. But
Hmm.
what is hard is sitting and being still for 10 minutes without thinking, oh, I should turn a podcast on. Oh, I should be listening to something. Like I'm just sitting here. What a waste of time. I could be doing something else too. Like just sitting with nothing and just trying not to think is actually way more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
So, and you're focusing on breathing and breath,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I find for me that my body wants to just get up. Like it's. I start to rise up automatically because suddenly a list has popped into my head,
Yes.
right? And so like I am trying to hold my body back as my body wants to spontaneously arise from wherever I am sitting or meditating to go do. this list that popped into my head.
Yeah, it's so hard for me because I can't stop. It's difficult for me. I'm trying to learn how to stop just thinking. And then, because when I'm thinking, I'm like, well, I need to do this. This needs to happen. This needs to get done today. Oh, I should write this all down. Like, I don't have to do it right now, but I need to get up and at least write it down so I don't forget about it. Like, it is.
I love that.
It's
But
hard.
I mean, the studies on it are really good about focusing on breathing
So
and
good
being
for you.
present. Yeah, so good.
It's so, every study that has linked to that with like heart health studies, it's so good for your heart to take time to meditate every day. It's just really difficult.
It's really difficult. I think that a really great way that I eased into it was by finding meditations to listen to.
Mm.
So I could kind of have that, like, as I segued myself away from being entertained in that time, but just to have something to focus on with my ear so I could focus on my breathing. So I
That's a
found
good
that
idea.
a nice transition.
Instead
I
of
know
going,
a lot of YouTubers who are in the meditation yoga space 100% have free meditations that are like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, up to like an hour. So,
yeah, no, that's a good idea instead of just going cold turkey with just silence.
right? Silence.
It's really hard to sit. It shouldn't be, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to sit with silence for that long.
Yeah. I just did a meditation where you keep your eyes open. That was really hard.
Oh, that would be so difficult.
Yeah. I was like, whoa, this was really hard. Like the input, the visual input, and keeping that, it's just like a gray space
Yeah.
in my brain was hard.
Yeah. I've been trying this thing where when thoughts pop into my head, which they do very frequently, I try to picture putting them on a boat and letting them sail away. But then I start
Nice.
thinking about boats.
And you're like, oh no, wait, come back. No,
So,
not the boats. It's just the gray space.
yeah.
And I am. They're always like, you just want to acknowledge the thought and let it go. There's no emotions, there's no attachments. You're just like, I see you and you're gone.
Hmm.
But
And I just feel like they've never met me. Letting things go is
you
I
have
have
a process
so
for that.
I have
And it's
so
not
many
it.
skills, and
Yeah.
that is just letting things go without like following my steps on how to let things go is not something I'm still working on learning how to do.
Yeah. Well, hey, very good. I sometimes think of my like thoughts as dandelion fluff because then they can just like they just like true, and there's no like boats. There's no boats.
They can just fly away, just fluff away into the air.
Well, I can see you're holding your sweet daughter, so I'm hesitant to ask if you're drinking anything other than her formula.
Actually, it's been really surprisingly cold here these last couple of days, considering that it's April and considering that we're in Utah, which is not like a crazy cold place in the spring. So I have some hot chocolate.
Oh, nice.
And it's nice because I forgot because we'd had a spate of warm days, and so we're in that time of year where like you turn the heater off in your house, but you don't turn the AC on yet. It's just on, just neutral
Oh,
ground.
yeah, I love that.
It's my favorite time. And so I turned it onto neutral ground, but I didn't realize how cold it was going to get last night. So I woke up this morning, and the house was freezing. I mean, it wasn't freezing, but it was like 60 degrees. And so I just haven't fully recovered. So I had some hot chocolate to just warm my belly, warm my soul.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
What are you drinking?
I've had a lot of warm, sunny days, so I am drinking a birthday cake frappuccino. No, frappe? Some sort of blended drink from a local place.
That we're not going to name unless they sponsor us.
Correct. Which, by the way, I'm just saying, then we'll be all like popular and awesome, even more so than we are now. Like other people will know we're popular and awesome, and then they'll create a drink after us at this place.
I love
So
that.
cool.
I didn't know I wanted a drink named or created after me until now, but now I know I want that.
And it's delicious.
And it sounds like it would be delicious.
When we started the Zoom call, it was completely full, but we chatted a bit before we pushed record, so it's a lot less full now. But
And
it's super great.
I haven't been able to reach my hot chocolate with the angle that my daughter's sitting at. So mine is becoming very quickly, I'm sure, mediocre room temperature hot chocolate.
Nice. Well, when you talk about turning the heat off, I love that neutral time. But then the minute you're talking about it getting cold, all I can think about is how little kids kick their blankets off like crazy. And I've seen sleep, and I've seen sleep, and I love how just puts his blanket over his head and torso, but his little feet are dangling out there. I was thinking, ooh, they have some chili toes.
Yeah, it was actually really interesting with the kids this morning when I got them up. Our oldest, he was still blazing hot. His entire body, I don't know how, because the whole house was freezing cold, but his entire body was still just like great. But poor little middle boy, his feet were freezing cold. I felt so bad.
Man, what has he got going on inside there?
A fire?
Amazing.
He sweats when he sleeps. He just some nights he'll wake up and his pillow will just be drenched with sweat.
Dang.
He's a hot boy.
Wow. Well, I know why it is. It's because he sleeps with the blanket over his head.
yeah, that could be it actually. Yeah, he started this thing where he wants me to leave his light on, but then he puts the blanket over his head to block out the light. And I'm like, well, no, I could just turn the light off. But that is not up for negotiation for him. Lights on, blankets over the head. That's the way he likes it.
That's what he's doing. That is how he's sleeping right now.
That's how he's living his best life.
It's cute.
He is pretty cute. I do think he's pretty cute. Well, your tea is brewed, it sounds like.
Yes. And your tea is brewed.
And my true crime is cued.
That is so perfect because that's actually what I was going to say.
I hoped that's what you were going to say. I was vibing it to you that that's what you should say.
I left my Post-it note in the other room, and my mind was visualizing a yellow Post-it note, but the words had not come to fruition on said Post-it note at that point. So I was like babbling, trying to get my brain to catch up, but it didn't. So
I like
now
you
that
so much.
And the true crime is cued. Spill the tea, Vaughn. What's going on?
Well, today, in part because I've had such cold weather, I wanted to take us to snowy Rigby.
Oh, I love this. Local stuff.
Yeah, well, local for us, not local for probably anybody else. So Rigby, Idaho, a cute little town. I want to say 15 minutes away from Idaho Falls.
30?
No.
40 minutes from Idaho Falls?
No.
Oh, no, 20 minutes. Yeah, sorry.
15, 20 minutes from Idaho Falls.
You said Rigby, which I totally pictured, and then still I thought of Rexburg.
Yeah, so. Rexburg's about half an hour. So we're southeastern Idaho. For those of you who aren't, intimately familiar with Idaho's geography, we have some family members.
An hour north of Pocatello?
Yeah, I'd say an hour away from Pocatello. 4 hours from Boise.
You can look it up on a map.
Yeah, I just keep doing this all day.
Yeah. Anyway, tell us about what happened in snowy Rigby.
Southeastern Idaho. Cold place. So the sources for today's story are East Idaho News, the Rexburg Standard Journal, findagrave.com, YouTube, and the Idaho Supreme Court records and briefs.
Nice. Those are legit. You didn't say Wikipedia once. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I do. I mean, not to knock Wikipedia though. They are a great starting point for research. Yes. But I did get some pretty official. I was reading like appellate arguments for this one. Wow. So
that's great stuff right there.
Today we're going to tell the story of the murder of Karen Cummings and Gregg Whitmore.
Wow, two.
It's a double homicide. So it is 2004, January of 2004, and Karen Cummings and her 7-year-old daughter Mikkel are in Rigby. So Karen had recently gotten divorced from her husband, and her husband lived in Salt Lake City, and usually Mikkel was with her, and Karen lived in Rigby, but Mikkel was coming up to visit her mom for the weekend. It had been a while since she'd seen her. She was super excited, and Karen had recently gotten engaged to Gregg Whitmore. So, they get there, and Karen's mom lives in Rigby as well, and Mikkel's like, I'll stay at Grandma's house. I just feel weird. I have a bad feeling. I want to stay at Grandma's house. But Karen's like, no, we're going to stay at Gregg's house, and Mikkel likes Gregg. There's nothing weird there. She just had a weird feeling she couldn't shake, but Karen wanted to spend the night at her fiance's house. And so they end up spending the night at her fiance's house. And Mikkel, she just keeps there watching a movie, and she keeps holding tight to her mom. She just can't shake this bad feeling. And as she goes to bed, a little bit before 1 a.m., she gives her mom a hug, embracing her for what is going to be the last time.
Oh, Vaughn.
So
Okay.
around 2 a.m., Mikkel hears scuffles, shouts. She hears banging on her bedroom door, yelling. She turns the light on in her bedroom, and she sits on the mattress because she doesn't know what's going on, right? She doesn't want to go outside because she has no idea what's happening. And less than an hour later, Mikkel sees her mom crawling into her bedroom covered with blood.
Oh my goodness.
And Mikkel gave an interview to East Idaho News, and she stated that she laid on the ground, rested her head on my mattress, and took her last breaths.
Oh.
So Mikkel then sees a woman come into the room, and they make eye contact, and she looks at her. Mikkel looks at her and says, "Please don't." And the woman leaves.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So shortly after this, around 3 a.m., Mikkel calls 911. And the police come.
So there was like a lot of scuffling, and then she calls home. Okay.
Yeah, so there's scuffling and shouting,
right.
And then her mom comes into the room, dies. Mikkel sees a woman, says, "Please don't." The woman leaves. Mikkel makes her way out of the bedroom. While she's going to the kitchen for the phone, she sees Gregg's body on the floor, and he has also died. So she grabs the phone, runs to her bedroom, goes inside of a closet, and calls 911.
Wow, I'm super impressed with her bravery to even go find the phone.
A 7-year-old little girl, right?
Yeah.
And she's
Mom,
terrified.
covered in blood, take her last breaths in front of her.
Yes.
That is like...
Yeah, her strength. And so it took a while. The problem was Mikkel didn't know the address of Gregg's house.
Of course not, yeah.
And so she couldn't tell first responders or 911 exactly where she was. So she gave them her grandmother's name and said, "Call my grandma. She knows
where we are."
So Mikkel's grandma, Karen's mom, actually arrives at the house about the same time that the first responders do. Because they call her and they're like, "Hey, we got this call from this, this little girl claiming to be your granddaughter and says that there's, all of these horrible things." So grandma's like, "I'm coming too," So they start doing a little bit of, investigation, looking into people's lives and things that they already knew. And they knew that Gregg had been formerly married to a woman named Shayna Parkinson.
Okay.
And later that same day, Parkinson was found at a gas station in Madison County, which is just the next county over from Rigby, covered from head to toe with blood.
Wow. Okay. I figured, like, when you're telling this story, I was like, ex-lover, ex-girlfriend, ex-wife. That kind of was my vibe there. But I'm also a little bit impressed that when they find her the next day, not too far away, that she is still covered.
Well, and it's not the next day, it's later that same day. So that was like 3 a.m. that Mikkel calls, and it's like 4 a.m.-ish.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so they actually found her really fast.
They found her really fast because Mikkel gave a description of her.
Right.
Like a pretty, what ended up being like a fairly like point-for-point description. They knew that there was a history, right, tying Gregg and Parkinson together. And so when they alerted local law enforcement in the surrounding counties and in their county, and then they got a call from a gas station.
Right.
That she'd been found at this gas station.
All right, that's fast. Way to go. All right. Awesome.
So, because she was covered with blood, the police took her to Madison Memorial Hospital in Madison County, and the doctors determined that there was no way that the amount of blood that was on her came from just one person.
Right.
And they also stated that she did not seem to be completely coherent.
Oh, okay. And did she have any wounds on her?
No.
Okay.
Not that I could find anywhere.
Right. So then they're even like, well, she doesn't even have any wounds. So whose blood is this? She's covered in blood, no wounds. The doctors were like, it did not come from one person.
And she's not coherent. So when the police start to dig into it, they determined that Parkinson's murder motive was just anger, right? It had been a very bitter divorce. She was very upset that he'd left her. Everything had been finalized with the divorce about 5 months previously. As part of the divorce settlement, he had gotten the home, and he had moved out while the divorce was being kind of finalized and everything, and he had just barely recently moved in. So Connie Allen is Gregg Whitmore's sister, and she also has given an interview that you can find on YouTube. And she actually was one that introduced Parkinson and Gregg to each other. At the time, right, she said that Parkinson was, completely normal, fun, like just thought they'd get along, like nothing big. But over the course of time, Connie said that Gregg became a victim of domestic violence and abuse by Shana Parkinson. She had some mental illnesses that were made worse by alcohol and prescription drugs. And so her behavior it went from like pretty normal and average, just kept getting worse and worse and worse over time. At one point, she was calling Gregg over 400 times a day.
Wow.
There were different instances where she was stalking him. She slashed Gregg's tires, bashed in his car, started a bonfire in the backyard of his house to burn personal things. Like he had served some time in the army, and she tried to burn his army awards and medals in this bonfire. And so Connie, is watching this, and she just feels like Parkinson is just escalating, and she's getting really nervous that Parkinson will try to kill Gregg, especially because it was Christmas Eve the previous month that Gregg had asked Karen to marry him. And Connie was nervous that this was going to completely just push Parkinson over the edge.
Right. Well, that's tough. That's really tough, Bonnie. We've talked a little bit here, even on the podcast, about mental health and how tricky it is to get good, like maybe whatever our qualifications for the word good, mental health here in the U.S. And I do know a lot of people who turn towards drugs and alcohol as a self-soothing mechanism, but I have not ever once had it be like, oh, that's just great. This is the thing that totally has cured all my demons, and I am so happy that I've started down this path of drugs and alcohol. I've never seen that come to fruition. So it is such a bummer that the things that we can self-soothe, and the fact that we have so much, more and more drugs are becoming legalized, because it seems to exacerbate the mental health problems that happen.
Well, and that's what, and Idaho is definitely not the only state that does this, but as part of their justice system in the state of Idaho, they have these mental health courts where, if it's a first time offense, and in some rare occasions a second time offense, but you can qualify if you have, something like schizophrenia or bipolar, or really, any mental health disorder that you have been medicating with drugs, right? And then you got addicted to drugs or alcohol. And they'll take you into this program where they find you medication, you meet with a doctor, they help find you housing, they help find you work, they help adjust your medication until it gets stabilized, to try and replace like actual medications versus the drugs that people are using to self-medicate, because they don't know how else to handle these mental disorders and these mental issues.
Right.
And so it's so sad.
Mm-hmm.
And and in this case, right, you have some different arguments. Connie, Gregg's sister, she thinks that Shana Parkinson knew what she was doing, and was angry and bitter, and that maybe these, her behavior was exacerbated by the alcohol or the drugs, but that she didn't know. But Shana Parkinson has always claimed that she did not remember the murder. She's always, like, her defense, when it went to trial, or defense on appeal, well, not quite on appeal, but comments she's made with, local news outlets since being convicted. She's just said, I don't remember doing this. I don't remember this happening. I don't know what happened. I have no memory of this. And there are people that believe that Parkinson didn't do it, despite the evidence. She has a friend, Jody Johnson, who had known her since they were in middle school together, and she doesn't believe that she did it. She's like,
Really?
I know her, I don't think she's capable of this. I believe that she's there, but I think that there was probably somebody else that did it. She thinks that maybe there was a man also with Parkinson that did it, but there's nothing to corroborate that. There's no evidence to sustain that. Police reports don't make a mention of anybody else being in the house that night. Mikkel was only 7, but she was a witness to what she saw and heard, and she didn't report anybody else being in the house that night.
Well, she did seem to be quite cognizant and was able to give a fairly descriptive, a fairly good description of the attacker, the aggressor. So I feel like she's pretty accurate. She's a good source.
Yeah, and it cannot be, to me, a coincidence that you have the description of this person. Mikkel is a 7-year-old. She doesn't know, like, she's not going to just be pointing out, like, describing. Yeah, she's not going to be describing an ex-wife that she's probably had very limited dealings with, if any,
Correct.
But she gives this description. The description aligns perfectly with an ex-wife who has had quite extensively terrifying, stalkish, abusive behaviors towards Gregg, and then that same person is found an hour later covered in blood.
Yeah, and we're going to get to the point where, like, with forensic science and stuff, that blood was indeed matched to the victims?
They did not. I could not find anywhere that they matched.
Okay.
It was 2004, so they had matching technologies. Idaho is sometimes a little bit behind the curve.
Well, maybe they're like, it's so... I don't want to say the word obvious, because I know you're looking for that, but it maybe they just didn't feel like it was necessary, or
and that's there's definitely, I think, a possibility. They're like, we don't need to test this. It might have been, I don't know how easy it is. I have no idea how easy it is to separate blood.
Right. I think they'd have to, like, keep testing different samples of her clothing or something like that.
And even then, all you would be able to do, right, is match blood types. Right? Say Gregg's an A, and she's got A, blood on her, but what if she's also an A?
If they're both A positive.
Yeah, exactly. Like, blood is not as easy to trace back to a person as DNA evidence is. Right? But it's also like, it wouldn't be weird to have her DNA evidence at the home. She used to live there.
Correct.
And I mean, you've got kind of this, maybe they were just like, it's not going to be helpful to us because all it could tell us is a blood type. And I don't know what any of their blood types were, but that might not be helpful. And DNA evidence is going to put her at the home, like they used to be her home.
Exactly. She'll have DNA evidence there regardless.
Exactly. So she Parkinson ended up going to trial in 2005, just later in the next year. And she was found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 27 years up to life in prison. In a good... So this doesn't always happen, but Mikkel did not have to testify, even though she was the prime witness. Because she was just 8 years old at the time. She was excused from testifying, but she still went to court every day, and she said that seeing Parkinson in court was terrifying for her. In an interview she gave later when she was an adult, she said, she was trembling, just the fear from seeing her again.
Yep.
Yeah, Parkinson is actually up for parole pretty soon here. I want to say 3 years.
Minimum 27, right? And she was convicted in 2025.
Yeah, and Mikkel has some so she did her interview a few years ago, but she said that she hopes that she doesn't get paroled. She said, I can't imagine living in the same world where she is free. So yeah, Parkinson, she'll be up for parole in 2031. So coming up in 6 years.
Right. And they notify people.
They notify family and victims and surviving victims, so they have a chance to show up at the parole hearing and make an argument one way or the other if they believe. And that's what. And Connie Allen, Gregg's sister, had kind of an opposite. She said that she had to forgive her. She had to let it go to move on with her life. She said that Gregg, wouldn't want her to just be
angry or whatever that big emotion was that she was feeling that was not letting her progress in her own life.
Yeah. And not that Mikkel is stuck in the past. You know, she is married. She has 2 kids of her own. But she said there isn't a day that goes by that she doesn't think of her mom and that she misses her smile. She had such a warm hug and she lit up the room with her presence, is how she described her mom. But Mikkel said that like she felt like Parkinson's sentence was just too light. She was angry. She thought there should never be a chance that she gets out of prison. Right. Ever. You know, she murdered 2 people. She was found guilty of murdering 2 people in cold blood.
And you said it in first degree at first, right?
Mm-hmm. So it was the jury found that it was premeditated. Right? So I want to just say a little bit about, you know, the victims. Karen Cummings obviously had her daughter Mikkel, who said that she was a happy, bright person. The inscription that they put on Karen's tombstone I thought was really beautiful. They said, "I can't take away the pain or heal your broken heart. My spirit will be with you while we're apart. I'll be together when the storm gets rough. Know that I love you, and that's enough. My life was taken by the hands of another."
Wow. That's a pretty impressive inscription.
Right? Mm-hmm. And just something that I just kind of hits you right in the feels, like knowing what she was through and knowing that her daughter watched her die. And I think...
Well, I was thinking about it too, like her last thoughts were of her daughter. Whether it was like to say I love you or was trying to protect her, there's something very poignant about that. It's her last thought is to go to her daughter.
And I do think, I don't know, I haven't spoken to Connie or Mikkel, obviously, but I do think there's probably a difference in the ability to forgive or move forward, or however you want to put it, when you know your brother was murdered versus you saw your mother die right in front of you.
Right, I was thinking about that too as you were telling the story, and I was thinking that Mikkel would think about her mother every day, regardless of it, like if her mother got hit by a car or got cancer or, heaven forbid, you know, whatever it was, like any other way, she still would think of her mom every day.
Yes.
Because she probably feels we didn't get enough time together.
Yeah, she was taken from her way too soon. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think about all of... Sorry,
such a senseless, again, like that's like my word of the podcast of all of them, because there's like it's unnecessary. This train could have like stopped at any one of the stops along the way. You know, it's again a senseless that she's missing her mom at this point. She didn't have to die.
Well, you think about
nobody has to die.
All of the things, I think, especially as a female, that you kind of rely on your mom for growing up. You know, I was lucky because I had also 5 older sisters in addition to my mom that I also relied on. But you think about your first date, or when you get your period, or when you have your first baby. You know, Mikkel has 2 kids. These are all experiences that you want your mom to be there with you for. You want her love and her support. You want her to guide you and coach you and kind of be like, well, this is how I did it, you know, and this is how I got through this situation. And she didn't have any of that because her mom was taken away from her when she was 7.
Yeah, when she got married, or just all those conversations that you have with your mom. Like, I mean, yeah, for reals though. And even if, like, it doesn't really sound like, I think she knows that it's tragic. Knows a tragic, a senseless end to her mom's life, like a lot of these stories are. But I think that regardless of how she feels about, I want to say Parkinson, right?
Yeah, Shana Parkinson.
How she feels about her, it's really more, I think, the absence of her mom.
Yeah. Really.
And the fact that she's like, look she did this before because she was upset. Why would that change in 27 years?
Yeah.
She's still capable of being angry and knifing somebody then.
And I think it's hard no matter what, but harder when you think like it didn't even, not that anybody should have died, right? But if Karen and Mikkel had spent the night at, you know, Mikkel's grandma's house.
Yep.
Because Karen was probably a side target because she was the fiance, but I have to believe she wasn't the main target.
Correct.
And it was an unlucky set of circumstances that put them in the same home that night.
Yes.
And it didn't, and so there's that extra, like, my mom didn't have to be taken from me.
Right.
If we had just been somewhere else.
Well, as you're telling that story, and when Michaela is getting that, like, that sense of urgency and that sense of sadness and that sense of, like, let's just go someplace else for the night, I'm like, you have to listen. Like, I think this story is going to end tragically because I know how this podcast works. Why don't you just go to grandma's house? And I get it. I get why she didn't, right? And I've been the mom who has done both things, been the mom that hasn't listened to my child being like, I feel really nervous about this, and also been the mom that has, right? And nothing tragic has ever happened in either one of those situations, but I'm still just like, just go to grandma's house. Or but that being said, even if, like, I was like, well, let's meet halfway, right, and be like, I'll take you to grandma's house and I'll stay here, then ...
Yeah, then maybe, I mean, is Parkinson ever even caught then?
Correct. And her mom just doesn't ever come back, and they're like, they go over and they find this huge crazy thing. You know what I mean?
And it is so, in fact, Connie Allen, speaking of, like, just listening to your gut when you don't really know why, she usually on her way into town, right, she would usually, with her daughter, she would drive past Gregg's house. Right. And just, like, that was just part of the route. And they'd be like, oh, hi Gregg's house, or hi Uncle Gregg's house. And that morning she just was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And her daughter was like, oh, aren't we going to Uncle Gregg's house? And she's like, no, like, we'll go see him after, and she thinks she was 100% just protected from that, because obviously she was going to find out that her brother had been murdered no matter what, but she would have seen the police tape, she would have seen the ambulances, she would have seen the police, right? And her daughter would have seen all of that too. And so it was just one of those things where she was just like, no, I'm just not going to do that today. And there was no why, right, in the moment.
Right. Yeah.
And it is, and listening to these and meeting people and researching them, there are so many times that I now I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to not do it. I'm just going to, if I'm like, well, I don't feel good about that, even if I can't articulate why. Like, there was one day, and it was, I don't know, a month after our oldest was born, and my husband and I were running some errands, and we both just felt so anxious, to the point where, like, we were talking, and I was like, we're running through a list of our family. We're like, is so-and-so okay? Is so-and-so okay? Like, should we call so-and-so? And I couldn't focus on our errands. And, I think we eventually just ended up, like, I was like, gosh, we just gotta go home. Like, I just don't feel, and I couldn't tell you why, but we both just felt so anxious. That could be lots of things. It could be that something was wrong. It could be that we just had a newborn and both of us were very tired, I don't know. Nothing ended up happening. Everybody that we called was totally fine. We were fine. But we just went home.
Kind of go into that but situation where we're thinking, well, we went home instead of doing the next errand. But was the next errand the time we get into a fatal car crash?
That's the thing, right? You don't know.
You don't know.
You don't know. I know that we ended up being fine, and that everybody we were nervous about was fine. But I was like, it feels stupid, it feels silly, but we can do the errands later. It's not the end of the world. We don't have to do all of them right now,
Correct. Yeah. And I think that it's important to listen to our intuition to the best of our ability.
Well, and there's been studies done, right? There's things that our subconscious sees and processes that our conscious mind doesn't.
Correct.
There's reasons for the anxiety, reasons for, and some people they get anxiety, and it is out of the bounds of what the subconscious is, right? It's been blown, like, your subconscious has blown it out of proportion. But with most things that you feel anxious or nervous or tense up about, there's a reason, right? There's something that your body is trying to tell you.
Like, our brain is super awesome, and we have all this outside input coming into our bodies, right? But our brain itself, our central nervous system, our subconscious, our animal brain, our forward-thinking brain, all those things, it's inside a closed container. The brain itself only receives input from other sources, right? And so it's kind of doing a little bit of that telephone game. And that being said, when, for example, like, do the studies where, like, you're scanning the jungle, right? And all you see is foliage. But there's something there where your subconscious recognizes the eyes in the foliage, right? And so they're like, oh, I will not go that direction, and you just like veer off course. It's almost out of your control because your body's like, hard right.
Yep.
So, and it's because we have this really cool. If we had to make every single one of those decisions, we would be paralyzed. So we have this automatic computer system in our head that is super cool, and it filters things out so we can make and does things automatic. We have all these automatic systems running within us at the same time. And then we have our limbic system and our thalamus and stuff, which is really cool because it's like it is kind of the guardian to our conscious mind, and it like makes decisions and regulates on our behalf so that we can keep on functioning in our day without having to make a decision over every single thing. Which, if you start to think about the decisions you do make and the decisions that are on autopilot, huge lists.
Well, that's so, and especially in this day and age, people already are getting so much decision fatigue from the decisions they do consciously need to make. But then also there are just the thousands and thousands and thousands of subconscious decisions that your brain sorts through every single day. That's part of the reason I'm reading this book called How to Break Up with Your Smartphone. And it's not the only book that talks about this, right? But part of what it talks about is how smartphones are rewiring our brains, right? Because your brain does have to make these split-second decisions all the time, right? And having a smartphone and being on your smartphone just creates more decisions. You see this notification.
Split-second decisions.
So you see this notification and you have to make a split-second decision. Do I click on that or do I keep doing what I'm doing? You know, just even little things like that your brain now has to process and sort through that it didn't used to have to. It's super interesting.
Yeah, also our long-term and short-term memory is decreasing because back in the old days when we just had like regular telephones, we memorized numbers. And then even before us, people memorized texts like books and letters, and there was just a lot more like long-term storage happening within ourselves. And now I tell you what, my kids all have cell phones. I remember my husband's cell phone number. I remember the number to our house growing up on.
Yep.
Any new number, like I have to work really hard to memorize.
That's what I will tell you. So I know I have our home phone number growing up. I have Chuck's mother-in-law's home phone number.
Because we called her a lot.
And it was just a super easy number to memorize. I have mine and my husband's. I have yours from this traumatic moment when I got lost in an airport. And I had to like say it over because I was calling you collect or something because I didn't have a phone. I was calling you collect to let you know that I had missed my connecting flight. And you gave me your number so I could call you right on the anyway. And so it was this whole thing. But I still have your number memorized from that because that apparently the trauma like seared it into my brain. And then mom and dad, I have their phone numbers memorized.
Yeah.
And I think Tom's. So I'm actually really proud of myself right now because that's way more than I thought I had.
Really, really good.
But I will tell you, I think Shane has his mom and mine. I think probably, right, and his obviously. I don't. Like you just don't. And that was there was a study done actually on London cab drivers because they have to take a test before they become qualified because they have to memorize
fancy, like London black cabs.
Yeah, they call the test the knowledge. Right? That's just because they have to have so much information known and memorized and just easy recall the entire city of London, right? And all the back roads and just everything about that city. And they did a study on their brains compared to other people's brains, and hypothalamus, some part of their brain was like noticeably larger.
Wow.
Right? Than a normal standard brain because they engaged. And then the longer they had been a cab driver, the more they readily called upon that vast amount of information, the more noticed and pronounced that the difference was. Because they were using their brain in a way that we don't use our brains anymore. We have maps.
Yeah. Instant maps on our phones.
Like who memorizes how to get to anywhere? Unless it's like in your town, you know?
Still, even then. Like, Ethan basically grew up here. You ask him to go someplace, and he's like, can you send me the address? I'm like, you learn to drive in this. Okay.
You were born and bred on these streets.
On these streets, mean streets of Yakima. Anyway, our brain is super fascinating, and I kind of think that um, we're not definitely not uh, using it to its capacity in our current situation so much anymore.
No, no, it is changing. And it's interesting for me to notice. I love reading. I've always loved reading. And I have always kind of thought that I do pretty good with my cell phone use. Right now I'm learning a little bit that I've deluded myself, but I am still okay, right? Like there's a lot of things I don't do and I don't spend a lot of time on. But even with that, it's so much harder for me to sit down and just read a book. I would do that for hours when I was younger,
Right.
and I would tune out the whole world. I mean, you could be trying to have a whole conversation with me and my brain would not even hear you. I would just be so intensely focused on what I was reading. But I've been learning it's actually easier to do that when you're reading a physical book anyway. There's
Oh,
less distractions, and the distractions are things more like you hear a car outside, you hear a vacuum cleaner running, you hear things like that your brain just easily knows that it can just tune out with no danger,
yep.
versus when you're on your phone, like on a Kindle or something like
Yes.
that, or on your computer
Yeah.
reading Kindle, and notifications come up and pop up and they're all new. And so
Right.
your brain still, it can't just easily tune it out. It has to make you engage to say,
Right.
is this something I need to pay attention to or
You have to
not?
make you have to make that decision every time you get a text, a call, a
Yeah.
ding, a
Because
notification.
even if it's 10 message notifications, they're all different. And so your
Correct.
brain can't just be like, oh, it's a message notification. You don't need to worry about that. Because your brain also knows that they all have different levels of urgency.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
so it's always going to look at it. It's always going to pull your attention away. And it takes 27 minutes on average for your brain to go back once your attention's been pulled away from something to get fully engaged in it again.
I had heard that it was 15 minutes, so I'm super glad that you said 27. That's really interesting
Well,
because I think that as a multitasking mom kind of person, if I have been practicing actually being more singularly tasked because I will jump around from shiny object to shiny object, right?
yeah.
Doing this thing and then this thing and this thing and then the thing I was first working on. Like you've all seen those like Instagram and real videos where they're like, and a mom goes to load the dishwasher and then she ends up walking through all the different places of the house doing these other things because then she, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that was my problem, and so I was like, okay, if it's gonna take me 15 minutes to get back on track to a job that I know how to
I'm
do,
just going to do it.
I'm just gonna like power through this job and then the next job and then the next job and then I won't have to waste all this brain energy getting back on track.
And I will say the 27 minutes, I only read that from one source. So let's say anywhere from 15 to 27 minutes for
Love
the
it.
sake of more accuracy.
Depending on who you are, what you're
Depending
doing.
on what source you're looking at. But it takes time, right? Your
Yeah,
brain
yes.
does not just flip right back. And you
Right.
can't engage just right away again. And that's the thing. Multitasking is a myth. Nobody is actually a multitasker. They're
I love
attention
that.
switchers.
Attention switchers. Yep. 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 I call it shiny object syndrome, where it's like, oh, I gotta take care of this thing, and then this thing, and then this thing, and
Yeah.
increase. So like, if you give a mouse a cookie, type of a thing.
Yeah, there was a study done where I think it was in 2019. That could be wrong. The average person spent 47 seconds on one computer browser screen before they switched over to a new one.
Wow. Wow.
So, I mean, let's see, that makes the fact that we've been staring at each other's faces on Zoom for, 50 minutes
50
now?
minutes. Mm-hmm.
Longer if you count all the time that we were talking ahead of time.
Well, all I want to say then, that just goes back to the importance of intuition and strengthening that aspect of our brain to the best of our ability whenever it's all possible to do it. So,
And I want to say, because I talked a little bit about Karen in the inscription on her tombstone, that Connie, when she spoke in her interview about Gregg, she said that he had a smile that lit up the world. He had served honorably in the army. He loved hunting and fishing, especially with his son from a previous relationship as his son got older, and that he was just a joy to be around, and that everybody that met him and knew him loved him.
oh man, see,
So that is the story of Gregg Whitmore and Karen Cummings.
okay, so how old was Gregg's son when Gregg was murdered?
That I could not find. He has never
Okay.
given an interview that I could find. And Connie did not mention his name or age, or I think he was older. Like, I don't know that he was like 18, but I think he was older than 7 for sure.
Right. That seems fairly safe to say. So, okay. Still, you know, I think it's one of those misnomers where people are like, well, not in this case where my actions only affect myself. Even if you're not going to go murder somebody, which clearly has an effect on other people, your actions have a ripple effect to the people in your life. Unless you are a guy on an island, right? Your actions do have an effect on people. And so I just think I don't even know where I was going with that, except for it's important to remember that we're all interconnected in this amazing planet that we live on. So
we are, and it's crazy. Just even things you don't think about, right? Like, even Shane has a bad day and he's grumpy, I get grumpier, right? I mean, I'm trying not to let that happen because I am my own person and should be able to be happy or mad or sad or whatever, independent of other people's emotions. But there are just, what you are connected to people. People are connected to each other, especially when you live in the same house with somebody, and everything you do it's the butterfly effect, right?
yep, absolutely. And I totally get what you're saying about trying to be like, well, I'll moderate myself and let him have his moment. That's totally fine. But it is, I think we do that vibe, that frequency, that energy. It does kind of rub off on us unless we neutralize it, like before it gets to us, right? We end up paying things forward that we didn't really want to pay forward.
Yeah.
So, the moral of the story being, don't kill people. It's bad.
So bad. Ruins lives, ruins your life, ruins the lives of people, family, friends, loved ones, children. Don't kill people. If there is a solid takeaway from this podcast, it should be, number 1, find a nice hot beverage, and number 2, don't kill people. You can flip the order of those if you so desire.
I'm thinking if more people found a nice hot beverage,
they'd be less inclined to kill people.
Exactly.
Just don't go stab somebody, drink a soothing tea.
Exactly. Thank you.
We could save the world. One hot beverage at a time.
One hot beverage at a time.
Well, thank you for joining us on this week's podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Vaughn. I love this time with you today.
Yeah, I also enjoyed talking with you. We're going to start something new and daring next week, so it'll be fun for us. But until next time, keep your tea hot and your curiosity hotter.
Perfect. We'll do. Bye, everyone.